Welcome to the Big Fundamental Podcast, a San Antonio Spurs podcast brought to you by Ken's 5, the official station of the Spurs. I am Jackson Floyd, and joining me this week, we've got Ken's 5 digital sports reporter Tom Petrini. How you doing today, Tom?
I'm good, Jackson. How are you?
You know, I just have one question for you as we get this started. Do you believe in moral victories?
I think you have to for this Spurs season, especially this start of the Spurs season.
Yeah. You know, 1 and 2 in the standings, 3-0 in your hearts. We're here to break down how we got to this point here, the first week of action. And of course, we're going to have positives, concerns, overreactions sprinkled throughout the episodes. So your spices through this. You know, the spice must flow for everyone who saw Dune. So we'll have some spiciness here for you guys.
That's the one about the worm, right?
Yeah, you know, I think it's 600 meters long, I think is what they say. But
wow.
It's some
great.
Worm.
I kind of want a different podcast where you ask me questions about Dune and me having never seen or read any of the Dune stuff, answer them. I saw a Twitter thread on that gave me some great energy.
Do you know what spice is?
Yeah, it's the only thing I want to put on my food / any food without proper seasoning. I just can't tolerate. So
you would like Dune then. Dune is a well-seasoned movie. So.
All right.
That's enough. That's enough Dune. We were watching other things on the TV as well. The Spurs. 3 games in the season. They had the game against the Magic. They won that one. And then 2 back-to-backs against, I think, what people would consider some of the best teams in the league. So a lot to unpack there. Let's start with the Magic game. You know, a season opener. They won that one, 123-97. I think we were all feeling really good after that win. And then it turns out, the Magic are maybe one of the worst teams in basketball right now. Mm-hmm. Still a lot of positives from the victory, right? You still are happy to take home a victory in that situation.
For sure. And one thing that I'm paying attention to with this Spurs team is how they perform in the take care of business games, as I like to call them. Past couple of years, they've had regrettable losses where you're looking back at the end of the year and saying, man, they really shouldn't have lost that game. And this was one of those games, and they controlled it pretty handily.
Yeah.
And you always love to see that. And also, Devin Vassell, He propelled a run there in the third quarter of that game that basically put this game out of reach, and crowd was feeling it. He was making a lot of big plays, and as the clock was winding down, he ran to the corner in transition, and before the ball's being passed to him, and the crowd is already going nuts because they know he's going to hit the 3, and he does, and so. A really solid all-around opener. We had 7 Spurs in double-figure scoring, and really sort of reinforced the idea that, this is a team that is going to come at you from a lot of different angles. Jakob Poeltl, his passing in this game, spectacular. And it's not like he's doing the most, incredible Pau Gasol from the top of the key passes. He's making solid reads, though.
Yeah.
It's not going to be incredibly flashy stuff, but it's going to get the job done for a lot of these guys cutting off the ball.
Yeah. I think game 1 is a good way to see who this team is. Sure, we've had 3 games of preseason, 4 games of preseason, 3 games of preseason, however many preseason games we had to kind of look at this team, but it's really, the first minutes of actual basketball that counts, and I liked how the ball was moving through the interior guys, not just Poeltl, but Eubanks had some good assists too. Jock Landale in his first NBA minutes had a beautiful pass to Doug McDermott, who setting him up for a great shot there, as he was cutting into the basket there. This team led the league in screen assists after that game. They're still maintaining that high level of screen assists, passes out of the screen that leads to baskets. I think we're going to see that throughout the season as well. Poeltl being a guy who is becoming a focal point of this offense, not just for what he does shooting, assists are definitely a big part of that. Maybe the best offensive rebounder in the game, and we saw that on full display against the Magic. He came so close to a triple-double. A few more assists, but those are Westbrook numbers, I guess. But he's just a fantastic offensive rebounder. Those second chance points are very big for the Spurs this year, especially if we're going to shoot 3-pointers the way they are doing that. We'll talk about that later, and we've got many overreactions to talk about later as well. But I just want to throw one overreaction I had from this game. and that's that Devin Vassell needs more minutes than Lonnie Walker. But I think we've seen over the last 3 games that maybe Lonnie still has a big part to play.
Why pit 2 good players against each other? You know,
Because there's only so many minutes to go around.
You're
right?
just causing drama, Jackson. No, I think that they're both going to be really fun to watch on that second unit. But Vassell, I mean, what we're seeing with him is a continuation of what he was doing in the summer league, where you know, his rookie year in the league, it was basically play good defense, take shots when you're open, kind of thing. Don't do too much, which, you know, makes sense.
Yeah.
But now he's definitely going a lot deeper into his bag for some of these shots where, I mean, multiple times before he went on that big third quarter run, he made some shots where watching you were like, okay, you know, that's not necessarily new, but it's something he wasn't doing with regularity last year, and it's something he wasn't doing with consistent execution in summer league. You know, he would get to his spots but not hit the shot. Yeah, and leading scorer for the Spurs in that game. So, you know,
if DeMar DeRozan wasn't playing so well in the Windy City, I might have thought that Devin Vassell like space jammed him on his way out of town, because that's kind of who he kind of, I don't know, it felt almost like a mirror to what some of the things DeMar did during the game. I mean, it didn't stick, the ball didn't stick when it got to Vassell as much as it would with DeMar, but those mid-range shots he was getting, the creation that Vassell was finding, you know, very, very similar, I think, in that regard.
I think he was really decisive off the catch and made a lot of quick fakes before he even put the ball on the floor.
Yeah.
That is helping him get past defenders. But, I mean, yeah, last year he would not have been a guy who, you know, all right, clear it out and let him create space for his own shot. And we're seeing some of that. And it's something that, you know, as he continues to try that, as his teammates continue to encourage him to do that, you know, I'm excited to see what he can do in that more ball-dominant role.
Yeah, I agree. And, you know, I mentioned the first time you get to see them playing meaningful minutes of basketball, but it's also the first time to see them put their money where their mouth is, if you will. You know, all offseason they talked about this is a team that was going to play with energy, that was going to play with pace, that was going to take more three-pointers, that was going to keep a simple offense together. I think they hit some of the marks there. You know, clearly the energy was there. Clearly the simple basketball was there, the pick and rolls. You know, they're not really going to set plays as much this season. I was a little concerned to see the pace, you know, and I know pace is a stat, an analytical stat that is, I guess, requires both teams' participation, if you will. That Magic Spurs game is the 3rd slowest game of the season so far, you know, in basketball, you know, but 1 week in. I think the Spurs, that's an outlier. You know, the Spurs, I think, played a little faster than than they did last year, but still the number of possessions they had was pretty low for the game.
So one thing that, and you're not the first person to say this, I think it's an interesting conversation about, you know, the idea of pace and what the statistic pace actually measures. So when you talk about the Spurs wanting to play with pace, wanting to get out in transition, they're doing that. They're, I think, 4th in the league as far as points off of opponent turnovers. They're pushing the pace when they get opportunities to. But the flip side of the coin is this is a team that, as Pop and as everybody has pretty much acknowledged, like, you know, they don't have that go-to guy.
Yeah.
So sometimes the offense is going to bog down, or they're just going to have to work for the entire shot clock to get a quality shot if they do. So they have those moments where force a turnover or get a rebound and a quick outlet, and they're moving. And that part is like, you know, they're using their speed in bursts, right? But on a team like this, you don't necessarily want them taking a ton of shots early in the clock. Like, you don't want this to be a 7 seconds or less team unless they're, you know, good open looks in transition from either 3-point range or layups.
Yeah.
Those are the early shots that you want this team taking. But other than that, I mean, they might grind out possessions. So I think when we have this conversation about pace, it's important to, you know, think about the math equation, right? You've got, you know, the number of possessions per game per 48 minutes. That's how you measure pace. And so there are going to be portions where the Spurs are playing very fast, where Dejounte or Derek or whoever has forced a turnover has got the ball moving the other way, and they're hunting for those quick shots in transition. Because they don't want to get into those half court sets. This team is, and any basketball team is going to be more effective in transition. So the more this team can get in transition, the better.
Yeah.
But I'm personally not concerned that they're playing too slow, right?
Gotcha.
I think it's more just a way that they're measuring that.
And in the transition too, Dejounte Murray has been elite early on the season. 1.5 points per possession in the transition is a top 5 in the NBA right now. So anytime he can get on the run, and he's had his chances this season, I feel like anecdotally, I feel like he is getting more transition buckets than he is buckets in the half court set. That he's finding other guys, and that's kind of the role he's taking on as the point guard here, the de facto kind of leader with the ball as well. When you mentioned no go-to guys on this team, I mean, it feels like in the next game they played versus the Nuggets, they really could have used one of those. Going down to the Nuggets, 102-96, the first game on the road out in Denver. Did you feel like this team kind of hit a wall without a go-to scorer like DeMar DeRozan or LaMarcus Aldridge, or even going back as to Kawhi Leonard? There's always been a guy over the last few years that these guys have played with who's the one getting the buckets in the fourth.
I mean, Keldon finished this game with 27 points. He was, if there was a go-to guy in this game, it was him.
Yeah.
But I think that at the end of the day, this game came down to you're playing against the MVP and he's making ridiculous shots.
Yeah.
Like Jakob Poeltl, shout out to that man really quick in the span of 24 hours guarding the last 2 MVPs of the league. And doing a bang-up job, and they just do things that you say, damn, like there's just nothing you can do.
It's unfair that Jokic was able to add like a Dirk Nowitzki to his game, and it's unfair that Giannis is now hitting 3-pointers. That's what are the Jakob Poeltl has no chance guarding Jokic when he's doing that fade away with the leg up. So
nobody can guard that Sambo shuffle, man. Like that's just gonna happen to you.
Yeah.
But I think that something that was really encouraging about what the Spurs did in this game was, every time the Nuggets looked like they were going to try to extend the lead, the Spurs were like, nah, we're staying here.
Yeah. I think I tweeted after the game that this team has no quit. They're going to win more blowout games like they did versus Magic than they lose blowout games, because they're not going to let teams go on a run and keep it that way. They're always going to fight back in this, and that's what they did versus the Nuggets.
And I think part of that is the balanced attack, right? The flip side of not having a go-to scorer is that, and this is something Pop has talked about a lot. He said this has to be one of the most together teams that I've ever coached, and like when Greg Popovich says something like that, your ears perk up a little bit.
Yeah.
And one thing that I think is very interesting is, we came from the beautiful game era, right? And we all know about the type of basketball that was played. Basically, as Kawhi came into his own, that sort of was broken down in favor of more of an isolation-heavy game.
Yeah.
And we're not seeing that with this team. We're seeing a ton of assists. We're seeing a good job done limiting turnovers for how much the ball is moving and how, how much of a dearth of talent, I guess.
Yeah.
For a young team, for a growing team, for a team with question marks about how they're going to make their plays, they've been making plays for each other, and that's really fun to watch as a basketball fan. So, I think that the question of who's going to step up tonight, it's I think an exciting thing for the guys in the Spurs locker room.
Yeah.
And I think it's a confusing and confounding thing maybe for the guys in the opposing locker room, because, it's like, okay, where are they going to come at us from?
Yeah, it's been 3 games. It's been 3 different lead scorers, and any guy can go off on this team. It'd be nice if like Keldon went off at the same time Doug McDermott went off, but that's the way it goes. It's funny you mentioned togetherness and the word together used by Pop, and it reminded me the way you said it, the together. It had to be together. Reminded me of this video. I don't know if you've seen it. And this is such a tangent. I'm sorry.
Deep cut.
If you are familiar with the band Focus and the song Hocus Pocus by the band Focus, it's a 70s band, prog band. There's a video of them on YouTube playing that live song. And please go Google Hocus Pocus by Focus and watch the video. But the woman introducing this band says, and now one of the most together bands of the 70s, Focus, with their song Hocus Pocus. And the band plays, and it is one of the most insane like 70s prog jams there's flutes involved, there's yodeling involved, but the thing is everyone in that band, all 4 of them, has such amazing unique talents, and the way that they come together and put those talents on display as parts weaving out. There's drum solos, then they cut to the guy yodeling, and then there's a flute solo. It's all spectacular. But that's the Spurs. The Spurs are Hocus Pocus.
Who's the flute player?
Oh my God, the flute player is definitely Keldon. Or no, Keldon. Well, so the flute player and the yodeler are the same guy.
Keldon's yodeling and playing the flute.
The same guy, but yeah, definitely like there's some Keldon and energy in that whole thing. But anyways, Hocus Pocus by Focus. I digress.
You do. You did.
Oh man, I'm sorry, guys. Only on the Big Fun Pod can you find conversations like that. What else did you want to take away from this? I feel like the front court depth of the Spurs was tested early on. There was some foul trouble. Anytime you're guarding Jokic, you're going to get into foul trouble because you maybe have to be a little physical, or maybe he's a little crafty in the same way that we're seeing guys like James Harden or Steph Curry in the last few years be crafty and drawing fouls. Really good at that. But Poeltl got into foul trouble early on. We saw Eubanks come in. We saw Thad Young play a little bit at the center position as well against him as well. What did you take away from what the Spurs have there? Because I feel like that was a weakness last year.
Yeah, center depth was a weakness, and I think will continue to be a point of interest for the Spurs and their fans moving forward. Eubanks had a really solid preseason.
Yeah,
I think he's been fine in the start to this season, but really what we're looking to see is can either Jock Landale or Thad Young basically clear that bar.
Yeah,
where it's like, this guy should be the backup center. And obviously tough timing for Landale with getting a concussion kind of heading into the season. He's had minimal minutes here. Yeah. That backup center job seems pretty solidly Drew Eubanks at this point. And, I mean, anybody is going to have a tough time guarding Jokic without fouling.
Yeah.
And Drew... like he's a solid effort guy always. He's not going to back down from anybody, but he's definitely more suited for second units. And when Jakob Poeltl is guarding the other team's star player, it's not going to happen on most nights.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there are Spurs fans who are like, Jokic does this every time to Poeltl, gets him in foul trouble. That's just what he does.
Yeah, that's his game.
That's Jokic being a special player. And so, yeah, I mean, it's going to be tough for the Spurs on nights when Yak does get into foul trouble. We saw him in the next game against the Bucks. He's guarding Giannis the whole time. And it was religious. Every time Giannis is out of the game, Yak's out of the game taking a breather. Every time Giannis comes back in, Yak's going out there to guard him. So, I mean, we're going to see some of that with Poeltl, and I mean, foul discipline is going to be a big thing. A lot of times, there's nothing you can do though. And he actually, participated in getting Giannis into some foul trouble that almost swung that game the Spurs' way. So.
Yeah, I mean, that was the Spurs were able to take the lead again when Giannis had to sit out for a huge swath of the third quarter there. And that's on Jakob for doing that. Of course, they do drop the game. Unfair to have to fly back from Denver to San Antonio and play the defending champs that night, even if they don't have Brook Lopez. Not a fun situation to be in. They dropped that game 121-11. I mean, a little concerning about the defensive rating of 117.5 in that game. But again, this is the defending champions. They're really good at basketball.
And they were hitting shots.
Yeah.
I mean, one thing that was constant for the Spurs against both the Magic and the Nuggets was they limited both the number of attempts and makes from 3-point range. And in the Bucks game, I think the Bucks shot 15 of 30 something. It was like 43% from three, and a lot of that done in the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
So it was a 3 or 4 point game heading into the fourth, hanging with the national champs on the back end of a back-to-back on a night when, by the way, players not named Doug McDermott shot like 3 of 28 from three.
Not good
for the Spurs. And I mean, in the Nuggets game too, they shot 6 of 24 from three in the Nuggets game. So like, if you have even an average shooting night, you can feasibly win both of those games.
Yeah.
And that's something that the guys have been talking about is, we want to hit more shots. We've been putting in work to hit more shots. We trust that we will. But also, that's the thing about basketball, right? Like if you've watched for a long time or if you've ever played it, you know that you can do everything right on a basketball play and set the right screen and have the guy make the right cut and get the ball in the right spot on the right pass and make the right shot, and it'll just doot and not go in the hole.
Yeah. It's just the way it is.
That's the game.
There was one shot from Dejounte that was in, and it hit the interior of the rim like 3 or 4 times, and then just careened out, a little bit there. So yeah, sometimes that happens.
Right. And is it fair to be concerned about like, oh, the guy's not named Doug need to be shooting better? Sure, yeah. I think through.
We're going to dive into that one a little bit here later on, but yeah, no, it'd be nice if more people were hitting shots, I think. And the thing is, shoot or shoot, eventually you're going to start making them, right? How good of a fit has Doug McDermott been 3 games into this?
Gorgeous. Beautiful. Oh my God.
He's not as splashy a signing as John Collins. No. He's cheaper than John Collins, but really seems to fit what this team wants to do.
Yeah. I'm interested to see tonight what happens when you're playing a team like the Lakers, where their front court has, if he's playing tonight, LeBron James, and then Anthony Davis, and then DeAndre Jordan. Like, do you have Doug McDermott guard one of those guys? Do you have Derek White guard up? I'm interested to see what happens there. But as far as the offense goes, we've talked about this half-court offense for the Spurs, and I mean, he's a godsend for them, where they're going to have a lot of possessions that just kind of peter out, and there's a lot of side-to-side motion in what they're trying to run, and I mean, he's just a relentless and purposeful mover.
Yeah.
Everybody talks about his shooting, and yeah, in that Bucks game, he had career high 7 made threes, 7 of 11, pretty nice. But what really strikes me is just the way that he is always moving to dangerous spots, not just beyond the 3-point arc. And Pop has said, like, he sets a high bar for us with that little stuff that he does really well.
Yeah. I mean, it's been so much fun watching him kind of quickly get integrated with the team there. I want to talk about the good and the bad and the wild from these first 3 games, but I just got one more question for you. Looking back at these 3 games, we've talked about what the team has done on the court. How would you grade Coach Pop? How has he done with the rotations, getting people integrated? Have you liked what you've seen from him?
I have. Yeah, no, I think it's been a matter of putting guys in the right spots, and he has them operating with a lot of freedom. He has them taking a lot of initiative for themselves, which, I mean, that's a coaching thing, right?
Yeah.
And the guys have talked about sort of the randomness. There are obviously some questions that I think we'll get into here about, should Primo be playing more? Should Thad Young be playing more, especially if they're trying to trade him? Plenty of valid questions. Yeah. But I think for the most part, when you look at these games, I mean, they're trying to win games against some of the best teams in the NBA. And, so if your quibbles are about, like, who's getting bench minutes, like, okay, like, it's fine.
It's pretty far down the food chain there in terms of things.
And I think he's been, like, understanding and like he knows his average age of this team is like 25 years old, He understands it's a learning and growing thing. Even though he did take a timeout, I think in the Magic game. Yeah, it was a Magic game. It was the first game of the season. Somebody went. Drew Eubanks kind of dropped in a pick and roll, and they gave up an open three. And I'm pretty sure Pop called timeout just to scream into Drew Eubanks' face for about 30 seconds until he got tired. And Drew's just like looking up, taking it. But I mean, there's also this understanding that like, and it's been that way for Pop for a long time, where it's like, we go, we play, we win, we lose, we'll figure it out, as long as we're, together and doing that effort part of it. So I think that the identity that they've been able to build speaks to the coaching. I think that, he's really happy that, and he's said this multiple times, that they're executing the things, they're doing the things that they know they need to do, we know we need to do to win basketball games. And just the way his guys are talking, the way they're playing, I think speaks to his coaching.
Yeah, and most nights you'll get to do those things against teams that are worse than the defending champions and the Denver Nuggets, who were one of the best teams in the West last year. I have to commend Pop for not resting players. I know it's early in the season. He spoke to it early in the season. They're a young team, but back to back after a quick road trip, flying back here, everyone played in the Bucks game. He didn't sit and he went out, and that goes a long way to building that kind of. The nature of the team, what you want this team to be, the kind of mantra, if you will, that they're going to play with. And, so I think that was a really good move on his part. I liked the timeout he called there. I felt like it really kind of kept the momentum in our favor in that Magic game. And, he's been able to do things like when Giannis is out, felt like the tempo really kind of picked up in the Bucks game. And so I think that all comes from Pops, as you're saying, the moves he's making there are speaking to what this team's going to be. And 1 and 2 is not the best record you want to speak up. There are plenty of teams in the NBA who are better than that and worse than that. But also, early on in the season, that's not generally reflective of who you are. So right. early sample size in that sense.
Yeah, and schedule matters, context matters.
Exactly.
And if they go 1 and 3 after losing to the Lakers tonight, I don't think that's sound the alarm bells like, should they fire Pop time, although I'm sure somebody will say it. But context is important, and I think Pop is rightly proud of his team and the way that they have played in the context.
Yeah. Early sample size, but still, I think there's plenty of things here to offer in terms of the good, the bad, and the wild. I want to know positives, concerns, overreactions from the first three games. We're going to weigh in on these, starting with what we were just talking about, the team identity as a positive. This team, the Spurs team this year, is all hustle, all energy. They're not going to give up. They're not going to quit. And from a viewer perspective, they are fun. I can't. I mean, as much as I liked the DeRozan Aldridge pairing and those guys off the court, a lot of those games weren't fun. What do you think about the identity this team has built so early on, and moving ahead through the season? Is that going to win them some games?
I think it's really cool to see just the energy that these guys play with. It's raw. It's like it's like kids playing a kids game, and when you combine that with the sort of multi-pronged offensive approach and the principles that they play with, right? This is something that, we've been talking about a little bit, but it's not really set plays. It's just, they have their main principles on both ends, be aggressive on defense, force turnovers, get out in transition, set screens, cut, space the floor, pressure the rim. And they're just, doing that.
Yeah.
And, when you have that style and you couple that with the identity of, we're just going to hustle the whole time, that becomes dangerous. That becomes a team that can take care of business on nights when they need to, and also punch up a little bit, especially against a team like the Lakers or the Bucks, where every other team has them circled on the schedule like we're going to give them their best punch. Spurs are going to give a lot of teams their best punch this year. Yeah. And on, I think, a lot of nights, it's going to surprise people how enough that is.
Yeah. I mean, this isn't a team with superstars. This isn't a team with all-stars. All apologies to Bryn Forbes. But You beat superstars, you beat all stars by bringing the energy on nights when they're not going to. We'll see what kind of energy the Lakers have tonight. There's been bad juju, bad vibes surrounding that team early on in the season, and I'm looking forward to the matchup tonight. Speaking to that hustle as well, there's been very few times the ball has stuck, and I think that goes to the identity here. We were talking about so few ISO plays earlier on. I mean, if you go and look at the NBA advanced stats, and they break down stats per play type, we don't even meet the minimum threshold for like isolation plays to give stats. The Spurs don't meet the minimum threshold on post-up plays to provide advanced stats on that. Those are good signs for this team that wants to move the ball. It's different for sure.
It's different, and it's sort of what we were talking about with the transition away from DeMar DeRozan and LaMarcus Aldridge, where these guys, are, instead of basically being relegated to complementary roles around those more ISO post-up heavy players, they're now getting the opportunity to create, which is fun. I
mean, if you're one of the throng of Spurs fans who have been clamoring over the last few years to see the young guys play, that's what you're getting this year. So I hope you're enjoying it. I've got a concern to throw out you connected to that. Energy is a thing that fades over time. Not all of us are the Energizer Bunny or Keldon Johnson. Do you see the energy wearing off as the season progresses? And I'm thinking like even looking so far ahead that, come January, we talked about the schedule a few episodes ago, but they've got a 10-game road trip, a little break, and then another 10-game road trip right on the heels of that. That seems to be the slog of the season in which you could see some of that energy fade. What does this team look like if not energetic?
So I think it's interesting to, you look at where these guys are in their careers, right? They're all young. They've all got young legs, but they've all also been through it before. Like this is not going to be anybody's first road trip. But for real though, like they're going to have some experience. So to me, they're in that range that's really good for longevity and maintaining the energy, where they're young enough that they're still like, not, like you said, they're not all Keldon Johnson, but Keldon Johnson is there and he's screaming like a little kid. Love it. Always. There's just like a collection growing online of, screaming Keldons. But they're going to be able to maintain that, I think, and maintain the focus because, you want to focus that energy, right? And there's, I think, going to be, more of a level of comfort for a lot of these guys who are going on their second, third, fourth, fifth NBA season. So, and I think it's infectious, right? This is something that Devin Vassell said after that Magic game was, when one guy starts going off, everybody's on it. Mm-hmm. And, we saw it after one of those Devin plays where I think Keldon actually might have hurt his face on Drew Eubanks because they're just both going crazy. And I think he smacked his face on Drew Eubanks' shoulder. He seems to be fine. But, they're just bouncing off the walls rooting for each other, which is really that's why we love sports, right? It's just a really fun thing to watch and be in the arena for. The fans are getting into it. They're going nuts on big plays. Doug McDermott threes in the air. There's you feel the rise in the crowd and the anticipation before it splashes in. It's fun, man.
The chanting of "We want Primo,"
at the end of the games.
For that,
it's been both of the home games so far. The people want Primo. So.
Yeah. Now, if Keldon Johnson is an Energizer Bunny, Dejounte Murray is a Slinky. Not only can he stretch out, and cover the, he's got such a long wingspan. He is such a havoc wreaker on the defensive side there, and but sometimes the spring can be too tightly coiled, if you will. I'm concerned, and this is more of an overreaction. This is an overreaction. I think Dejounte is trying too hard. I think he's too tightly wound right now. Trying to be the guy who replaces the leadership the Spurs have seen. He's the de facto leader. He's already the leader, regardless of what he does on the court, with what he does off the court with this team. But I feel like as the primary ball handler and as the guy who is being kind of putting on his shoulders to take the mantle for this team, there are just plays where I feel like you can just feel the tension from him. All anecdotal, that's what an overreaction is, right? Just what I'm feeling, what I'm watching. Does he need to just chill a bit? Would that go a long way for him?
I think he needs to be sort of on 10 a lot of the time for this team, because he is that guy that they're looking to, and he's initiating a lot of the offense. I think he's been focused on finding his teammates. He's been focused on taking those pull-up 3-point shots. He's hit like 1 of 10.
Yeah. But he's taking them.
He's taking them, right? And we'll talk about shooting in a bit, but law of averages, like, it's just good to see him creating that way. I think that honestly, like the things I'm concerned about with Dejounte are like getting beat early in the game on backdoor cuts, and stuff like that where because he is aggressive on defense, he sometimes has a propensity to guess wrong, or just get caught flat-footed sometimes. And there's going to be a lot asked of him.
Yeah.
So I honestly think he just needs to keep doing what he's doing. Shots will start falling. But he's still like near the top of the list, I think, without question, for this team when you're asking that question, who's going to get the ball in critical moments and be asked to make a play.
Yeah.
It's still him.
He's still one of the best in terms of assist ratio in the league too. And I mean, a lot of the offense has been taken off his shoulders when they can get Pirtle involved. And having Dejounte and Derek White in the lineup at the same time has really kind of been a luxury through the career so far. And getting a full season of that, I think, will be good for Dejounte as well. With Derek and Dejounte on the court at the same time in the starting lineup, that's relegated Lonnie Walker to the bench role. And I think a lot of conversation heading into the season, a lot of expectation was him to kind of be the Manu light for this team, right? Kind of be that guy. And we saw, as they didn't come to a contract extension agreement, that he kind of said, his team was kind of banking on him to kind of step forward this season. A positive I'm having so far in the season is I think that Lonnie Walker looks good in that role as the leader of the second unit. He's hit just shots where you just kind of have to scratch your head. I don't know if, he's got like anti-gravity boots. I don't know if you ever played Tony Hawk Pro Skater, but there was a cheat where you could turn off gravity for a bit. And I feel like there are times where Lonnie Walker has the cheat code. He just floats. He contorts his body. His long skinny frame kind of goes in any direction he wants. A stat that I found today that I just was blown away by, and that I'm very just very encouraged by, is that Lonnie Walker is the best pick and roll ball handler in the league right now when it comes to scoring. He's averaging about 4 possessions a game when he is the ball handler in the pick and roll, and when he shoots off the pick and roll as the ball handler, he's shooting at an effective field goal percentage of 80%. 75% of the time he's the ball handler in the pick and roll, he is scoring the basket. That's the best in the NBA, and that's amazing, and I'm happy for him.
That's really good.
Yes. There's a lot of detractors right now surrounding that, but I do think that Lonnie is stepping up.
He's doing a great job getting to it in a variety of ways, too.
Yeah.
Like, I think if the Spurs need a 3-point shot, and they need somebody to create that 3-point shot off the dribble, I think the player that they're going to go to is probably going to be Lonnie Walker, because he's looked really smooth and comfortable coming off of screens and pulling up and hitting shots. And also he's got so much control now over his dribbling and attacking and driving, where, when he came into the league, it was like he's got all this ability, but like he needs to learn when not to go 100 miles an hour and, change speeds and directions and create advantages with that athletic gift and not just try to use it to overpower.
Yeah.
And he's doing that now. Really awesome to see. In that Bucks game, he had a couple of plays, and it was the same layup going to his left, hanging in the air. And, he did it twice in a couple minutes. And you're just sort of watching, and it's like, how is he still in the air right now? Like, it's like that slow-mo in SpongeBob where it's like, how is this scene still going? But like, and the control that he has while he's in the air now. There are plays where he'll lose it on the way up, and he's just there for so long that he can figure out how to get the ball in his hands and put it in the hoop before his feet touch the ground.
Yeah.
Yeah, the shooting will come around for him. I think he's 5 of 19 from deep right now.
Yeah.
But I mean, this is the role you want to see him playing, and he's doing well.
He's taken the second most threes on this team behind McDermott, I think, at this point in time. And
Yeah.
while they're not falling, he's taken that, and that's encouraging. What are you seeing from him as a playmaker, as a ball handler, like as a distributor in that second unit?
I mean, he's still, I think, got to work on taking the blinders off a little bit. But he can turn simple reads into very special passes.
Yeah.
Which is, again, increases the aesthetic part of it. But he's also making some more advanced reads where he's throwing cross court passes, and we're seeing less of the drive, jump. Oh, that's not going to work. Where are my teammates? And he's got time up there, but not that much time.
Yeah.
So there's been less of that this year. There's been, I think, a little bit more maybe trust in his teammates, understanding placement and where everybody's going to be. Still somewhere that I'm looking for him to continue to expand on as he becomes a more dangerous scorer. That's what his assisting is going to come from. It's going to come from drawing the defense and making a decision.
And he might have more assists if the guys who's passing to are hitting the shots too, right?
Yes.
And that's the next concern. Guys not named Doug.
Yes.
Their shooting has been kind of woeful from the 3-point arc there.
25% to be exact. 19 of 75.
That's not
If
good,
you're
and
not named
that's
Doug.
worse than last year.
Yeah.
Is that who this team is, or are they going to play better than that? Are they going to return to what they were averaging last year, which is about 36%, I think, from threes, 35% for threes,
I
something
think
like that.
yes, and also yes or no.
I think I asked a few questions in there, but yeah. No, go on.
But I think that, I mean, look, this is a team that doesn't have, outside of McDermott and Forbes, Forbes is 1 of 9 to start the year. He has not started hot. These are players who, for the most part, prefer to drive and attack the rim. And they're all being asked to try more from 3. And they all should be fairly average, I think, from 3. And to start, they've been very below average.
Yeah.
In terms of executing the shot. So just math-wise, I'm confident that they're not going to have another 3 for 28 night for the non-Dugs. I just don't see that happening very much. It's encouraging to me to see, they're taking more threes than they did last year. The percentage has not been great, but they're generating good shots, and there is a willingness and an acceptance that we all need to take these. So, I mean, like we said, they're winning games, or getting close to winning games against the Nuggets and Bucks on woeful shooting nights. If they can be even slightly below average, better.
If Forbes hits 2 more 3-pointers, I think that Nuggets game is tied, right? That's just the level they need to rise to. When they play at their average, they're going to have that. I mean, I understand how the math works, and I do think that there is a little bit more concern to me that guys not named Doug aren't going to get the same quality of looks maybe that they were last year. When you've got a guy like DeMar DeRozan on your team who kind of takes some of the gravity, that leaves. I think you've got a little bit more distance between you as the shooter and the man guarding you. And without a guy like DeMar DeRozan, and we've seen, Lonnie kind of take some of the mantle there, and Dejounte takes some of the mantle there, but they're not taking the same defensive gravity, the same defensive pull, as you will. So I wonder if some of the shots, and I need to actually go back and look at more 3-point shots the Spurs have taken and seen the distance between the defender and the shooter. I would just wonder what the looks are like, if they're different.
The gaps seem to be smaller, definitely in the half court. Mm-hmm. Just in general, because they're looking for creases and trying to find them. And, and NBA defenses are good.
Yeah. Now, I mean, one of the guys we mentioned in that conversation about shooting was Bryn Forbes, and he's the subject of the next overreaction here. Given his play and the play of Josh Primo, who I will remind you, as I mentioned this, is perfect in terms of shooting, 2 for 2 in his shots.
You kept going with that sentence. You could have ended it much earlier.
Primo is perfect. The end. No, should Popovich consider benching Forbes for Primo or giving Primo a little bit more of the minutes there? What do you think in that terms of that overreaction?
I mean, I think that Forbes is obviously going to come around shooting wise, but I also think that Primo offers more in terms of the other elements of the game. I think that the things that he does are, I mean, like you want Lonnie and you want Devin taking a lot of those primary opportunities off the bench.
Yeah.
So, if you're going to use Primo the way they used him at Bama last year, like, space the floor and, make plays when you can and play good defense, like, he could do that and he would be effective at that. He could also run some offense for them. But I'm not ready to say like, Bryn needs his playing time cut. If something like that happens, it will be because, Primo is impressing. And there may be games where it's like, a guard has the night off and Primo will get more minutes. I'm excited for any Primo minutes though, because any time there's even a chance he's going to get in the game, AT&T Center's live. It's fun.
He was at the center of what I thought was one of the most encouraging plays from the Bucks Spurs game. Garbage time, obviously, he gets in for the last 90 seconds of the game and only gets really 2 possessions on offense there. But on the last possession of the game, there's 2 seconds left on the clock, and he's in, and someone takes a shot and it misses. He sneaks in, gets the rebound, and just has a beautiful floater layup that just kind of scores a meaningless basket for the team. But, that goes back to the identity, the energy, the hustle, the never quitting. Primo's already embodying everything that this team is trying to embody. I think he's just one of the most encouraging Spurs young players we've seen in the last few years in terms of, like, this quickly, he's got it figured out. I think, there was some of that when we first saw Keldon in the starting lineup. We were like, oh, whoa, hold on. This guy's 15 games into his Spurs career, his career in the NBA, and he's already starting and looking good with the minutes he's getting and is a difference maker. Forbes, I mean, Primo could be a difference maker, but I think that doesn't come at the expense of Forbes. Forbes has a role to serve, and Primo, as you said, is going to have a different role with this team. And the way a shooter gets out of a bad streak is to keep shooting. It may suck to see Bryn Forbes take 7 3-pointers a game when he's hitting one of them, or none of them has been the case sometimes, but, he needs to keep shooting to figure this out.
And it will surprise me if Greg Popovich decides to go with the rookie over the guy he's known for way longer.
Well, I mean, shout outs to Eric Salinas on Twitter for bringing this up, but it was 15 games before Tony Parker was 19 years old, thrown to the fire.
I think he said
like
5 games.
5 games? It's 5 games. So, I mean, it doesn't happen often, but that's a case, when that does occur. But I don't think that Primo's going to get the Parker treatment, mainly because there are other guys in this rotation. If Dejounte and Derek and Lonnie and Trey Jones in some minutes and Devin Vassell and Forbes weren't the guys getting those minutes, then maybe you see the feet to the fire there for the rookie. But I don't see it happening. I think when the G League starts up, he's going to be sent right there for a few games, and he'll probably quickly prove that he is much better than overqualified to be on that G League team. But yeah. A guy who, that was an overreaction, so we're going to go to a positive now. The defense has been as advertised for this team. I mean, we knew last year they were a better defensive team than, I think they were ranked 21st. When they had all the guys on the court and, were playing at their best, they were better than 21st. They're clearly proving that this year as a top 10 defense in the league. I think right now they're 4th or 5th in terms of defensive rating. Jakob Poeltl is still the second best defensive guy. I think pound for pound, dollar for dollar, the best defensive front court center in the league. But for the Spurs team, I think it really starts with the backcourt. Dejounte Murray and Derek White are a problem for opposing teams. They are long-armed and willing to throw their body in front of plays, and it's a struggle I think we've witnessed for 3 games for teams to find what they want to control the offensive side there, and that's going to be a good thing for the Spurs. What have you seen from this defense?
It's a defense that doesn't really have a lot of weak links. Like starting unit, I guess you could say the weakest individual defender is Doug McDermott, and he's been fine in the team concept.
Yeah.
And when you have a defense like that anchored by Pirtle, and you've got the talent and aggression, they can afford to be more aggressive and gamble more.
Yeah.
And they're applying pressure. Magic game they forced 16 turnovers, and then against the Nuggets and Bucks they forced 20 or more turnovers in both of those games. And they're getting out and running when they do that. So it's been really cool to see, because you've been watching this team. They've had guys who are solid individual defenders, but for the past couple of years there have been too many not too solid defenders in the rotation for these guys to really play this style of team defense. There's a lot of switching, and the communication has been really nice. Can improve, but guys know where to be. They're helping each other. They're communicating on screens and switching and doing a lot of really good basketball.
Yeah.
So.
Forgive me, I do not remember which Twitter handle shared this stat, but I think White and Murray are causing a turnover 1 every 5 possessions, 1 every 4.5 possessions, something like that. That's a really good number. That's best in the NBA. That's how this identity of energy and pace gets brought up too, is on that side. And so I think they're in a lot of weak links. We're going to talk about how one of those weak links will be challenged tonight a little later on versus the Lakers. But I do think in this game versus the Lakers as well, Russell Westbrook's going to have a really hard time because I think Dejounte Murray and Derek White are just going to be all over him. And there's not going to be a lot of open looks for him. A concern kind of based on that, I think the defense has looked its worst in the minutes that Thad Young has played with this team, which aren't very many, but are you concerned that are you concerned with what you've seen from Thad Young on the court? And at the same time, are you concerned with how little you've seen him?
Yeah, it's more, I'm concerned that I haven't seen him play enough, because if you're going to use him, that's one decision. If you're going to have him out on the court, cool, that's a decision. If you're going to try to trade him, that's another decision. But if you're going to not play him, then it's going to make it really hard to trade him.
Yeah.
So, that's something that I'll be monitoring moving forward. He's a good basketball player. He's a good all-around basketball player, complementary skills that, I think could benefit this team. He's a better defender than he's shown. A lot of it is just being in the wrong place. But if you don't play, you don't get a chance to really develop that sort of chemistry and feel with new teammates. So definitely something to keep an eye on. The basketball that we've been watching has been overall very good. Mm-hmm. So I've been paying less attention to that. But, it's definitely something to watch.
In the last few seasons, they've had situations that kind of mirror this in some ways. Think about like Damari Carroll, who was going to be moved, right? Didn't want to be on this team. That for whatever reason, there were some organizational differences, or just didn't fit in, or wasn't a part of the Spurs plan. And the Spurs held him out, and he ended up being a buyout candidate. They ended up buying out his contract, right? And then similarly, Trey Lyles, was a guy who just couldn't find his way into the rotation. Ends up walking this offseason. Just did not play last season for whatever reason, and they could have used him. We talked about some of the front court weakness there.
The thing is, Young should have more value than both of those guys did. If the Spurs fail to extract value and basically wind up just having got the first round pick and second round picks back for DeRozan, it'll be, something. But there were aspirations of, maybe they could get a first round pick. And it doesn't look that way right now.
Yeah, I think I saw 2 seconds floated out for him, which That's something, I guess. It's better than having to buy him out later on in the season. You just kind of wonder why there wasn't a trade before the season started.
If they were going to do this.
If they're going to do this, exactly. Yeah. I mean, maybe the offer wasn't there they're looking for. I still think maybe there's a team like Phoenix or Philadelphia who sees the season progress and wants to make a move for him. But at the same time, with the way the NBA works out, you can find guys on the buyout market. And that's what teams do, right? They wait for the buyout market. That's how, the Nets got LaMarcus Aldridge. So, I mean, we'll see what happens. But, yeah. Our last overreaction. The Bulls are 4-0. Patty is the dark horse for Sixth Man of the Year. Are you concerned watching former Spurs succeed? Is that something? Was it too soon to let Patty walk? Should he be there instead of Forbes?
I mean, I have reached a point I think a lot of Spurs fans did where it was like, I like this guy. With Patty, love this guy.
Yeah.
But also, time for something new.
I just
for everybody.
You got to enjoy it, right?
Right.
For what DeMar did, for what Patty did for the Spurs team and for the San Antonio, it's just been really fun to watch them do that.
I'm excited for the new look Bulls.
Yeah.
I love watching DeMar DeRozan. Shout out to the guy though who 2 weeks ago had the foresight to look at the schedules and be like, oh, Spurs are probably going to start 1-3 with this schedule, and the Bulls are going to beat the Pistons twice and the Zionless Pelicans and the Raptors and start 4-0, and the discourse is going to be bad. You were right. You were
Nailed
correct.
It.
Bad discourse indeed. The Bulls are going to play some, more competitive teams, and I am excited to watch them though. League Pass team for sure.
For sure.
I don't think it's a real big deal though.
No, you just gotta love to watch them. You watch them succeed. They're part of your system. It's like you're rooting for former assistant coaches when they take over and win championships and everything. All right, I want to look ahead at the week that we've got coming up. We play the Bucks again Saturday. We'll play the Bucks before the Bulls do. Speaking of that schedule, Mavericks Thursday, but then tonight we got the Los Angeles Lakers in the house. LeBron James is questionable. What difference does him playing make in this game? Is that a stupid question?
It'll make a little difference. I think the reason for why he's going to be so important is different than it's been for most of the 2 decades that LeBron has been one of the best athletes on the planet. He's also now just like a really accurate off the dribble 3-point shooter.
Yeah.
Cool. Good for him.
Yeah. I mean,
cool that he just figured out how to do that.
It goes back to Jokic adding to his game and Giannis added to his game. It's just a little, unfair.
Right. Just stop.
We talked about chinks in the defense here. I think this is a game where that could be highlighted if he does play. In terms of you've talked about this plenty off the mic, but who does Doug McDermott guard?
Yeah. If you're playing against a team that has LeBron at the 3 and Anthony Davis at the 4 and then a center, and Doug McDermott is your power forward. Questions. Yeah. I have questions. Do they throw Thad Young in there for defense? I don't know. That seems at this point like it's probably not going to happen. But you look at a team that big, and I mean, Keldon has the body to guard up on LeBron. He could guard AD. It would be really tough. And then you've got the question of who guards LeBron then. And if it's Doug McDermott, I mean, kudos to him as an individual defender in that team, but advantage LeBron. Yeah. Always.
I mean, I think to me it makes most sense to probably slide him on DeAndre Jordan because he's the guy who could less feast on the mismatch, in that sense, and then put Pirtle on Davis and have Keldon on LeBron.
A lot of help.
Yeah. But I see the Spurs sticking with what's been working so far. Yeah. Switch, help out, let Pirtle be the anchor there, force them into the mid-range. Be interesting to see on the defensive side. On the offensive side, 3 games in, we've had 3 different lead scorers. Are you predicting that for the 4th game? Who's the lead scorer for the Spurs tonight?
Dejounte Murray, I think. I think he's going to have a really favorable matchup here. And yeah, I think he'll be able to get to his spots and have an effective scoring night.
I think so too. It's going to be a really fun game to watch. The Lakers are motivated to kind of shake some of the bad vibes. This is a good team for them to do that against, I think.
Yeah.
But the Spurs are looking to go to 500, and this is also an opportunity for them. Of the next slate of games, if they want to win one of the next three, this is the one to win.
This is the most winnable looking.
So before we all bunker down to watch the Lakers game, I just wanted to share some news with you all.
No, we don't need to do that.
You can fast forward if you don't like bad news.
Yeah, no, stop.
We try to end the podcast on good notes, but
Don't do it.
This is my last episode of the Big Fundamental Podcast. And so I'm gonna read from this. I'm gonna do more reading than I normally do because this podcast has meant so much to me, and I want to make sure I say the right things. The podcast is clearly going to go on with Tom at the helm and continue to be the best pod on all things silver and black. Fittingly, I've done this. This is the 69th official podcast recording since I started it in 2018.
Nice.
Cameron Songer, former Kins 5 employee, and I started it then. We were just two guys chatting about the Spurs and, didn't really have a whole lot of planning into it. We listened to NBA podcasts and trying to figure out how we would do that was a thing. It was all a passion project, and it took whatever free time we had between the normal duties as journalists at Kins 5 to put that together. For a while, we'd go into a vocal tracking booth. I think one time we shared a mic and just went back and forth in that sense before we figured it out. Recorded it into a free audio program. Sometimes I'd bring my own audio equipment. We record in whatever empty room we could find. We've used a post-production studio, the green room for Great Day SA here. Went in a conference room on the third floor once with Joe. Whatever was available for us, we did. Cameron was always really good at what he did. He was just really natural at it. Tom, you're the same way. I've always felt like I was out of place in that sense. But, for a good year, it was a sandbox. We tried new shticks. We had a segment for a while, Cameron and I did, called Driving Us Batty in honor of Manu Ginobili. And then we finally settled in. And that really came to fruition in 2019. Evan entered the fold, Evan Klosky. While I was away, my son was born and I took a month off. And I always felt that's when the podcast really began to resonate with you all, the Spurs community. And I came back, we worked Evan into the rotation. Cameron left shortly after, and then that's when you entered the picture, Tom. And around that time, Ken's also kind of invested in our future. We got good mics. We have this studio kind of positioned as a podcast recording space, good video in terms of that as well. Tom, Evan, and I got into a good rhythm and started really doing some of our best work. And I felt like sitting between Tom and Evan, I was always the avatar for Spurs fans. I got to ask my two favorite basketball minds all the questions I had about the Spurs. I was able to learn more about analytics, what stats are important and what matters. And I was also able to learn about what to watch for during the games. And that grew my passion not only for covering this, but for the team as well. I've always appreciated the respect, that Evan, that Tom, that Joe, the other kind of pros at this gave like my takes and my conversations on the Spurs. But I just want to say, Tom, truly, you are the best. I don't think anyone who's listening to this podcast can fully fathom the passion that he puts into his Spurs coverage and the podcast, the wealth of ideas that he is chomping at the bit to bring to you all. The Big Fun Pod's only going to get bigger and better as this continues. But as for what's for me, I'm stepping away from the newsroom. I'm switching gears professionally. I'll still be among you, offering all of my takes, my memes, my graphics on Twitter, just from a fan's perspective. But I do have just one final thought as a journalist. This team is all fight. They're going to win more blowout games than they lose because they're not going to let themselves lose by 20. They're going to win against teams with more superstars like the Lakers, just on that energy alone and that fight. And so in that fighting spirit, I just have to say, go Spurs, go.
Buddy. I'm going to miss you so much, my friend. And you are my friend. I've learned so much in my time working with you. And man, it's been just a tremendous pleasure. You're not going to be able to get rid of me, though, because you're staying in this city. And I'm still going to be smoking you on the go-kart track and, seeing your little kid hopefully soon.
Yeah.
But
Tom bought my son his first Spurs gear. He's got a Spurs jumpsuit that he wears from time to time.
It's going to be a power forward.
Yeah.
I'm excited.
It's going to be awesome to see. I love you too, man. We're definitely going to catch you.
I don't know if I said I love you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I step over bounds there?
I do.
You're my friend.
I do love
too.
you, though.
Yeah.
I really do. And thank you so much for everything, man.
You got it. All right, that's it for this episode of the Big Fundamental Podcast. You can find Tom Petrini at Real Tom Petrini on Twitter. He is headed to the Lakers game right now after we share a big hug when the record stops.
Nah, leave it going.
All right, hold on. Hugging on. Can you guys hear the hugs here? There we go. Love you too, man. And I'm Jackson Floyd. The Big Fundamental Podcast is a Kens 5 podcast on the San Antonio Spurs, brought to you by Kens 5, the official station of the Spurs. And we'll see you next time. Thank you for listening.